Hi, folks. So I'm here for another episode on my Archetype Awakenings podcast. And this is going to be slightly different because I did have something planned with a guest, but I'm rolling with it. And I felt, well, what do I feel called to share about? And is really a key theme that's going to help you guys really see yourselves in a deeper way so that you can drop into your soul self and live life because this life is precious. And so a theme that I see so many people struggling with and has been one of my own battles and can still be is this fear of rejection. This fear of rejection and this fear of judgment. And this is what I'm going to speak to in this episode. So stay tuned. It's going to be a juicy one. And why do we have this? Most humans have this fear of rejection. Um, and if they don't, then they're probably lying. But at some point in their life, maybe they have evolved even more on their spiritual path and that journey, and they have overcome that fear of rejection. And it's an ongoing process. It doesn't just happen one day. You have no fear anymore. But what I've learned about fear is it's walking with the fear side by side, right? It's not trying to get rid of the fear or like shut it down or hide it away. That just makes it stronger. We need to walk with the fear because the fear is going to be there when we step out of our comfort zone, when we do things that feel vulnerable. Like if you are here, you're probably a sensitive soul. So I get you. You feel things very deeply. You're attuned to energies, emotions. So this fear of rejection can run so deep, right? Because if you allow yourself to be seen, then that can feel more intense. And this is something I dug into recently. It's like, okay, with this fear of rejection, like, okay, what's underneath that? And you keep digging, and there's many layers to it. But actually, part of that fear of rejection for me is if I'm seen in the limelight, if I am, the attention's on me, and of course it is me doing this podcast, but as I grow and more people see my work, etc., being in the limelight feels intense. Something and I'm still learning how to do, by the way, because, and actually I want to share this because I've just done a live 4-day event. You can still check out the replays, by the way, last week. And one of my beautiful oldest clients was saying, I love how you just chat away, you're so confident. And, she's followed my journey from the beginning, but I said to them, I was like, this wasn't always the way for me. Like my journey was, and I will share this because I illustrated this in the 4-day challenge, and I feel like challenge immersion I ran, it's not a challenge. But the point is, I wasn't always like this. And I want to share this because if you are really struggling with this fear of rejection and it's just getting in the way of you creating the thing that's really on your heart, that's really on your soul, that feels so alive, I want to speak to this. So, when I was a kid, when I was little, I was very shy. I was very, I was sensitive. And I really wouldn't engage with people. Apparently, your parents tell you about how you were as a child, and maybe I was 3 or 4, and people would say hello, and I wouldn't want to engage with them because I was sensitive, and I probably felt their energy, and probably it didn't feel good, so I didn't want to engage with it, right? But if we don't have these caretakers or people around us that understand that sensitive nature, we can internalize that, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm broken. Like, or be shamed for it because somebody's trying to force you to say hello or engage with somebody as a small child and you didn't feel comfortable with that. Um, and I was very shy, always been introverted. At school, I would never offer answers in class. It was like this whole, I guess, story of like, I felt invisible. I felt so invisible. And even if I knew the answers, like I remember I was really good at English and I knew answers, but I wouldn't offer them because I was worried. Partly now I understand it is I didn't want that attention on me because I just wanted to blend into the background. That felt safer. But also there was this part of me like, if I get it wrong, then I'm going to be rejected, right? So I didn't. The deeper layer of that was me wanting to be perfect, which had so many layers to it. So I'm sticking to the sphere of rejection, what we're talking about. And so throughout school, I didn't really offer. I was always, on my reports, it always said she's really quiet and reserved, and I used to get so agitated by that, right? Because, and you might relate to this, I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel understood by a lot of my teachers because in some ways, and I was picking up on the energy underneath what they were saying of like she's quiet, she's reserved, she could offer more answers in class. I felt like that was a negative, not a positive. So then I internalized, well, I'm invisible. It doesn't matter. What's the point of offering answers? And I didn't really try. School was just like boring and mundane to me, and like it is for most people, right? And I would only really engage if somebody really encouraged me and understood me. And I remember I had this RS teacher. And I could see she really understood me. I felt deeply seen by her. And this is probably a projector thing as well, FYI. Like I'm a projector in human design. So this need to really feel seen and recognize is really strong. And I remember she would always sort of encourage me to share, but she did it in a way that wasn't forceful, in a nurturing way, and sort of like picked on me, but not picked on me, you know how some teachers do. Like it was just the way she did it. It was gentle, but she could tell she was trying to encourage me to offer my answers, and she knew that I knew the subject well. So then she asked me to read this prayer in an assembly, and I was like, oh, terrified because, getting up in front of anyone was like, oh my gosh, like I can't do that. I think it was like I think it must have been like year 10, maybe year 9. So I guess I was like, I want to say I was about 14. And that's a big deal. That's an awkward phase of your life anyway. So I was thinking, oh, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. But the fact she even asked me and could see that I was capable of that, she wanted to help me step out of that comfort zone and she encouraged me. And I remember like going into school, being dropped off one morning, and my mum was like, there she is. I was like, oh, I want to wait. Like I wanted to avoid her because I didn't want to have to make that decision because it was easier for me to just say, no, I can't do it, right? But these moments in our life are opportunities for us to step up and to step out of the story that we're telling ourselves. Because you being attuned to energy, you being a sensitive soul, you being introverted, does not mean you don't have a voice. I want to remind you that those are your superpowers and you have a voice. You have such a powerful voice because you th see things that others don't. You feel things that others don't. And so I saw the teacher and I said yes. But she believed in me. She was that catalyst of me stepping out my comfort zone. And I did the prayer. I was terrified, but I did it. And that was a little moment of, I can be seen. It's actually safe to be seen. Um, and it was a prayer, so like everyone was bowing their heads. So it wasn't like everyone was looking at me. Um, But yeah, so I was very invisible, I was very quiet, I didn't speak up, and I actually picked drama as a as my GCSEs, which my family was shocked at because drama, you've got to get up and perform. But some part of me was like, right, I'm going to push myself. I'm sick of blending into the background and I wanted to be seen. That's what's driving me. And actually, I think in some ways, probably some of you can relate to this. The reason I like drama, it was like I was a different character. So it wasn't me. I could put on this character and be bold and confident, and it's helped me step into those qualities. So this fear of rejection can go deep, and it can, it can be from things in your childhood where even in at school you offered an answer and it was wrong and maybe you were shamed for it. Um, but there's a piece of this fear of rejection, what I understand it is actually there's parts of us that we don't want to see. And we so fear being rejected because as humans, imagine our ancestors were in tribes. Like, if you were rejected or maybe ostracized from the tribe, like, imagine you wouldn't get your food, you wouldn't have a place to sleep, like, all these fundamental needs we need as humans maybe wouldn't be there. So it's fundamentally ingrained. And I see the fear of rejection is there are parts of yourself that you are rejecting, right? So I'm going to say that again. The fear of rejection is also there are parts of you that you're rejecting. And these are the unconscious parts of you, the parts that you shut away because of that fear of judgment. Like I hear this a lot as well, like being in the spiritual closet, which I probably was for a while, because if somebody's known you a certain way and then you believe in different things that the people around you don't, like what's going on with her? Is she off her rocker? That, and people judge because they don't understand, right? And humans, it's human nature to judge. At the end of the day, the reality is people will judge anyway, whatever. So you may as well fucking be yourself when you put yourself out there. Because if you're trying to mold and adapt to what you think people want you to be, that's when that's a part of when burnout kicks in. Because you're filtering yourself. You are literally being that chameleon to try and say the right thing so you don't rock the boat. And that's very much linked in with this fear of rejection. So I want to ask you to shed light on this. Like, what are the parts of you you're rejecting? They may be really obvious to you right now. They may not. You may need to dig deeper. But I want you to feel into what are the parts of me I'm rejecting. Because once you start to accept those parts of you, that fear of rejection no longer has power over you because you really intimately know your shadows, your unconscious parts, and you approve and accept all of them. This is the part of what's really helped me is that, I've been putting some really edgy things out recently, or things that, when I say edgy, that are maybe a little bit discomfort, uncomfortable, that are not vanilla, that is literally coming from a fiery place within me, like creating awaken the dark feminine day retreat. Like that's really out my comfort zone. But I'm doing it, and that's the work that sets my soul on fire, just like the work you have. And so this fear of rejection, also linked with this fear of judgment, is because there are parts of you are judging. And once you see what those parts are, they start to, they don't have power over you anymore. So that is the first thing to really dig into is like, what are those parts of you you're rejecting? Dig deeper, journal it, and see what comes out. And then really accepting them, moving into a space of acceptance of those parts. Because, whatever somebody is mirroring to you, whatever you are activated by in somebody else is a mirror of the thing that you don't want to own in yourself, that you've disowned in some way. That's always a great way to see. That's like, there we go. That's a little assignment for you. If you don't know what parts of you you're rejecting, go have conversations with people and you will start to see what are you triggered by? Were you activated by? those things in that person are exactly the things you're rejecting in yourself. Okay. So, for example, I've shared this on social media, so it has had permission. Um, but a mentor I ended up working with last year, when I first saw her it was in like an art, it was in I think it was a divine painting inspiration course that I did. And this mentor was doing like an EFT tapping session for artists to sort of clear the fears. Um, and I remember her coming on to do this masterclass, and I was so, well, almost activated. She made me uncomfortable. And the reason is, I remember thinking, who is she? She's so bold. She's so like almost cocky. I thought she was cocky. And like, who is she to talk about this? She's not an artist, blah, blah, blah. It was just so super judgmental. And obviously, doing this work years, I realized that they were exactly the parts of me I was disowning. I actually admired her confidence, her this kooky side. Like, she was a real fireball of courage and just fuck it, do it anyway energy. And that was what I was disowning. And eventually I ended up working with her like I think 3 years later, which it was just so funny because when you do this work, those things no longer trigger you. If you've really accepted those parts of you, even the darkest parts of you, because we all have them as humans, then that fear of rejection does get quieter and you start putting yourself out there no matter what. So that is one practice for you to go dig into this fear of rejection. And also, like, where did that, you know, what is a memory of you when you were younger when you were rejected? Um, you know, it's funny because I can think of, or you were shamed in some way, because that will feed into your fear of rejection now. Whatever happens before you are 7 very much, paints the stage of who you are and that story you tell. Um, and at the end of the day, whatever we create, creativity is taking a risk. Every time you create something, it's a risk, it's vulnerability, it's in the unknown space, right? I've just put a group program out there. I haven't done this thing before, it's completely new. And I'm in the vulnerability of it, but I'm also following that fire inside me that wanted to create this group program. And by the way, we will be digging into the fear of rejection and deeply really fortifying into your soul expression and into your soul's medicine through astrology and other tools I have in there. So check it out. It'll be in below in the description. Um, but yeah, that fear of rejection can run deep. What did I want to say on that? Even things like an example's not specifically coming to my mind right now, but think of sports at school. There's a point where, somebody gets to pick their team players, things like that. Maybe there's an experience where you were picked last, or, whatever it is, that is a fear because you were in that maybe shame because you were picked last. Then you've internalized it's not safe to be seen. And this is the fear of rejection can really hold us still. And so we procrastinate, we stop putting ourselves out there because we're so worried about being shamed or ridiculed for showing up as ourselves. But if you are truly in your truth, truly speaking from your heart and your soul, the right people will love on you. The right people will come and love the things that you're creating, and it will resonate so deeply. So, dear one, whatever, don't filter your light. Don't mold yourself to fit in because you're so scared of this fear of rejection. Start looking at those parts of you that you do reject, be conscious of them, and that fear of rejection will no longer have power over you. And it's a practice. Showing up like this, for example, I was saying like this was not me. I remember when a mentor years ago flicked a camera on me, and because I was scared of it, and she just got the ball rolling, and that was like, okay, I'm video. I was like a deer in headlights. I wasn't confident. I wasn't like this. If I look back to videos from like even 2021, like I looked so awkward. Like I'm not speaking. I'm very much in my head and it's all, my voice just sounds completely different. It takes practice. And if you truly want to put your work out there, and be that leader, create a positive impact in the world, which I know you do, you have to be seen. And you have to practice being seen in your true self, in your being vulnerable, because you're not perfect. No one is. Be seen in your flaws, be seen in all of it. And, if the people judge you, that's normal. People are going to judge you. But just know that if you're sharing from your truth, and your passion, what is the worst that can happen? Yes, there's people out there, trolls, but at the end of the day, the fear in your head is way bigger than the reality of what will happen with this fear of rejection. So go share your magic, go share your creations, and I would love to hear what is surfacing. What are those parts of you that you're rejecting? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to dive deeper, you can come into our 4-month process, Rooted In, starting in September. The details will be below. And I would love to hear your thoughts and insights on this topic of this fear of rejection. Bye for now, folks.